To please join us. Ladies and gentlemen, he is also a moderator for the panel discussion. Welcome, sir. And I would request Mr. Sanjay Gautam, Police Inspector, CBI, to please join us. I request Mr. Bijumon, a Specialist Investigator, IBM India, South Asia, to please join us for the panel discussion. I would like to invite Mr. K. Venkatesh Murthy, Senior Manager, Cyber Forensics, DSCI. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a huge round of applause, please, for our panelists? I think a little bit of more energy will be appreciated. All right, now I request Mr. Krishna to please start with the panel discussion. Thank you so much, sir.
So good afternoon to all. Thank you for giving this opportunity to act as a moderator for this discussion. So with me, I have people who are working with the law enforcement agencies. And I have with me Mr. Venkatesh Murthy, is a part of DSCA, taking care of the cyber labs that were present in various parts of the country. And Bijman is a law enforcement official, currently with a corporate IBM. Would like to share his experiences also, what is really happening in the corporate environment. So way back, if you remember, when I started this digital forensic laboratory in 1990s, and we don't have anything called as standard operating procedures. So we used to depend upon some other material available on the internet, especially from US agencies like a Department of Justice. If an investigating officer goes to the scene of crime, what is supposed to do it? And I still remember we used to train the law enforcement officials. If the investigating officer goes to scene of crime, if the computer is in on condition, we used to advise them, just pull the plug. And they used to pull the plug. They used to stop the power supply to the CPU. And they used to pack that CPU and they used to send it to the forensic laboratory for the purpose of analysis. But the scenario at that time is quite different. Mostly the environment is a desktop environment, not even a local area network and not even a wide area network, or forget about the things of cloud and all that. But the main issue at that time is the computers are having hardly 1 GB RAM, and it may be having something around 20 GB hard drive or some 40 GB hard drive. If an investigating officer goes to the scene of crime, having a computer with 1 GB RAM and some 20 GB hard disk capacity, if the system is in on condition and if they shut down that computer system, the maximum data they are going to lose it is the volatile data that is available in the RAM, that is 1 GB. But still they are happy that 20 GB of data is with them and they used to send it to the forensic laboratories. And there our success rate is 99.9%. Whatever the investigating officer experts, that type of data is going to be available and we used to give a very beautiful report. But once the RAM capacities were increased, today if you think of something 8 GB RAM, and where people moved from the desktop computer to the cloud environment, the scenario is quite different. The investigating officer is in a very big dilemma. If I go for a scene of crime where the computer was present in on condition, what happens if the system is shut down? In which network this computer system was present? What type of encryption files are available on the RAM? What type of volatile data he is going to lose it if they shut down the computer system? These are all really cropping up in their minds. So today, if investigating officer, he may be an incident response team member of a corporate or a law enforcement agency, if he goes to the scene of crime, if the computer was in on condition, pulling the plug is not an ideal step. And now we are finding it, if they just pull up, almost every criminal or any corporate, if you look at it, they are using a very good encryption. The entire disk is getting encrypted. Once the entire disk got encrypted, it's sent to the forensic laboratory. They are not in a position to decrypt it. And they are not in a position to take out any data out of it. So there is a change of standard operating procedures from desktop computer to today the cloud environment. And what type of standard operating procedures we really requiring? How to collect the volatile data available in the RAM? How to collect the various web artifacts? If any malware is there like RAMwares, etc., which are currently happening, if you look at last year, the target attack that happened Home Depot, most of the malwares today are getting operated from the RAM. If you shut down that computer system, you are going to lose also what malware and what type of activity is present. So the urgent requirement is a change of standard operating procedures. When the system was in on condition from a desktop to that of a cloud environment. So I would like to request Mr. Venkatesh Murthy, who is a part of DSA lab, which is bringing the governments, the law enforcement as well as the corporate together. They did a very good work in establishing the DSA labs. And the DSA labs has done a marvelous job in creating the standard operating procedures. They also did a very good job in capacity building. And today the investigating officers are doing a very good job. They go for scene of crime, collecting the evidence and maintaining the integrity of the evidence. So I request Mr. Venkatesh Murthy to talk about how they really help the various investigating agencies in developing the standard operating procedures and how the standard operating procedures are getting changed and what role today the DSA is doing and what they are planning for the next couple of years. Mr. Venkatesh.
Thank you, sir. So let us first start with the cardinal rules of digital forensics, the procedures. As you are very much aware, the first cardinal rule of digital forensics is if the computer is off, leave it off. At the time of seizing digital evidence, many of you might be from the incident response team or with digital forensics background. So you might have read in some books also or some standard operating procedures. Say for example, US Secret Service document also prescribes certain procedures. What to do when the computer is in on condition, what to do when the computer is in off condition. So the first cardinal rule is if the computer is in off condition, leave it off. Do not switch on the computer. But over the period, we have seen that there are issues arising out of that procedure, that step, what the investigating officer is taking. There is something called as clock skew. The clock skew is the deviation of the system time from the standard time. So, you have gone to the scene of crime where the computer is in off condition. You seize the computer because you have learned that you should never switch on the computer. After seizing the computer, you send it to the forensic science laboratory or your own incident response team to do the analysis. Imagine just in case if the CMOS battery of that particular desktop machine is completely drained, what would be the system time? What would be the time, date of MAC, what we call modified access created? Okay. What if the person is intentionally changed the date and time? So it will be affected on all the files. So the first cardinal rule of digital forensics, we need to make some modifications. If the computer is in off condition, leave it off, yes. Seize the hard drive. Post seizure of the hard drive, you need to switch on the machine, note the system time. Compare that system time, whatever the BIOS date and time is there, with the external source and record the deviation. Nowadays the latest forensic tools, they come with this option, the clock skew. You need to enter the clock skew. What is the deviation from the original time and the system time. And the second rule of digital forensics is if the computer is in on condition. Okay, you might have seen some flow charts also. Computer is in on condition, is expert advice available? If available, follow the advice. Nowhere it is mentioned what advice you need to follow. If expert advice is not available, what you need to do? Pull the plug from the wall. So that is prescribed in many of the standard documents. Now, there is something called as SOD defense. SOD defense is some other dude did it. So today the law enforcement agencies, they are finding it very difficult. In the past, they used to work on the IP address. Any case is registered based on the IP address, they used to get the physical address, they identify the machine, they are very happy. Once the machine is identified, they can further arrest the person also. Today, people have started using some defense, like SOD defense is some other dude did it. The IP address is to my own computer. The computer belongs to me, but some other dude did it. A Trojan was in my computer, a malware was running in my computer. So the malware has done this crime. I have not done it. How do you prove it? So in such scenario, we need to, whether the capturing the live content from the RAM, whether it is related or required for the case, irrespective of that fact, you need to seize the content from the RAM. That is one thing. And most importantly, the second development which has happened in the recent years is Edward Snowden's revelation. Edward Snowden exposed the classified documents related to US's mass surveillance activities. So till that time, people were more worried about their physical privacy. Privacy was something physical privacy. When I go to a change room, when I go to a trial room, I used to see whether there was any keyhole camera or some hidden camera. But post Edward Snowden's revelation, people started to think about their online privacy. So how do I escape from US's mass surveillance program? So then they came up with the innovative solutions like full disk encryption, which was there starting from Windows Vista. People started using full disk encryption, okay, to beat digital forensics, number one. Number two, the companies also, many companies who were providing the details which were very useful for the law enforcement, even the companies started gradually removing the security features. Okay, that is one development. Number three is the use of anti-forensics or counter-forensics or data destruction programs. People started using data destruction programs. So earlier the criminal used to download something, use it for some activity, and then they used to delete it. Now people they are thinking of secure deletion. Secure deletion, you are well aware. So in such scenario, we need to change our existing practices, number one. Number two, the SOP documents should always end with version number. It should not be a one-time document. It has to be updated now and then. And SOPs can't be common for all the devices. When it comes to computers, it is different. When it comes to mobiles, it is different. So there is a need of standard operating procedures, both from a law enforcement perspective as well as the corporate perspective. So that's my take on the needs.
Can you briefly also explain that what DSA has done it in this area and how the cyber labs which you have established is really helping and bringing the law enforcement as well as the industry together? The various manuals what the DSA has developed.
Yeah, in the year 2011, we developed and published DSA Cybercrime Investigation Manual for law enforcement use, which would act as a reference material for law enforcement officials who are involved in search and seizure of digital evidence. And one important feature of this particular manual was the contributors. Contributors were from IT industry, law enforcement, judiciary, prosecution. So Mr. Krishna Shastri, he took the lead in development of that manual also. Mr. Biju Mohan, Mr. Sanjay Gautam, they were also have contributed. So through our DSCI Cyber Labs program, we have set up 7 labs across the country in police premises. One in Bangalore, it is in Cybercrime Police Station CID. Similarly in Mumbai, Thane, Pune, Haryana, Kolkata, Chennai, Hyderabad, we have established cyber labs to train the law enforcement officials in handling digital evidence. Okay, we have 5-day courses running in the cyber labs, and for the purpose of the training, we developed the cybercrime training material, level 1 and level 2. Level 2 was released very recently. So this year, April 2015, Mr. G.K. Pillai, former Home Secretary and Chairman DSCI, he released that manual. And we also released this pocket handbook for investigators, which will help the law enforcement officials who are doing the on-site analysis of digital evidence, seizure and analysis of digital evidence. So through this program, till today we have trained around 49,000 officials from law enforcement, judiciary, prosecution, banking and IT industry. And we are still planning to expand it to bring it to a national level also.
Thank you, Venkatesh Murthy. So I would request Mr. Bijmohan to explain what are the corporate best practices as a first responder. As a first responder, if any cyber security incident happens, it may be because of an employee corporate policy violations, or it may be because of a malware attack, or maybe in any external intrusion. As a first responder, what are the best practices the industry is really following? And if the compute is in on condition, what they will do. If the compute is in off condition, what they will do it. What are the real tools and techniques the corporates are really using it. And how that evidence and how the privacy issues. Because the biggest problem with the corporate is when you try to access some information from a computer system. So the main issue there the corporate is going to look at is the privacy issue. So fortunately, police are not much concerned about the privacy issues in this country. But the main big problem in the corporate is the privacy issue. And the data which they have retrieved it, they can send it to the law enforcement for further investigation, because the legal issues and privacy issues are really cropping up. How the corporate is really handling this type of problems, and why they are not coming to police in cases where a big cybercrime happens in the organization. I'm very sure about it based on my experience. Maybe because the reputational damage, because if you give it to the police, they will have some FIR. Tomorrow the copy of the FIR will be given to the local media. So they are facing the big problem of the reputation damage. That's the first point. The second biggest problem is if they inform to the police, they may come after 3 days or 4 days. They don't want to wait till that time. So how the corporate is really dealing with such attacks where the law enforcement help is really required. So I request Bijmohan to speak about these two. As a first responder, what are the best practices they are following it, where the implications are very high, where they are supposed to depend on the law enforcement, what practices currently they are doing it.
Thank you, Mr. Shastri. Normally in corporate level, this digital investigations are coming initially for the internal investigation or internal purpose only. Most of the requests will come from either from the legal department or the HR department or the audit department. Sometimes this malware attacks is directly coming to the IT attacks, and also for the IP violation, IPR violations, all these things. So the initial responding or the first respondent, what in the corporate level, what we are using, as Venkatesh and Shastri already told about this cardinal rules of pull the plug from the wall. Now we are not doing that because our data is not residing in the system. Most of these employees are using the cloud environment, only they have an interface with them. Even if you pull the plug from the wall, we will not get anything. So live forensic, that volatile data collection, that is the main aspect we are looking on nowadays. Now the tools, because you know that most of this latest forensic, whatever the tools available in the market, is come up with the live data analysis and live data collection. So we are collecting the live data based on the scenario. We cannot say exact that this will happen in this scenario because each and every case is different. If it is a laptop device, is a standalone one, at least we will get some data from that one. If it is connected with the network, because we have an intranet, if most of the corporate have their own intranet, if it is connected with that intranet, definitely nowadays everybody is having this data residing somewhere in the cloud. So maximum information we will get from the system on the own condition. So live data collection is the first thing, and also main thing is that already Venkatesh pointed out that people will come with a defense. When we identified one machine for the particular employee is coming and stating that no, I did not do anything. This is happened something because of some malware attack or something happened. I did not do nothing. So in those situations, we need to identify whether this machine is affected with any malware. So the live analysis only will help in that scenario. So that is the major thing. So live system analysis with the available tool. So the thing is that we need to update day by day. We need to get the new versions of the tools. We cannot use the old versions because day by day the technology is changing. Even the tools also are changing. So we have to update the tools. We need to update our skills for this scenario. And in this incident response time, this employees, we already discussed about that, the defense mechanism is there. And in addition that, sometimes external threats external attacks are coming, even without the information or involvement of these employees also. In that situation, the internal investigation will go further for the law enforcement investigation. So of course, we cannot control or conclude our investigation internally. If it is something else, something in an external threat, something like that, a terrorist attack or hacking from external things. Nowadays, this is also happening. So in that scenario also, the first respondent team need to keep whatever the evidence we collected, that we need to record whatever action we did. All this need to be, because the corporate scenario, corporate investigators has to record their action, present in that way, what are the action we performed. These are the evidence we collected. This is the tool we used, everything. Because once it is going to law enforcement or authorities, definitely the question will come. Even if it is going for a further as a criminal case, the defense will come on stating that no, this was the incident response did by the private teams or the corporate team. So there is no procedure. So definitely we have a procedure. Each and every company have their own procedures. We have our own procedures. We need to follow up that procedure, and that also is changing. Every year or every month, we have to get the new versions of that SOPs. That way we are doing. And the second thing, the corporate and why it is not reporting to the law enforcement. Of course, the answer already Shastri has mentioned, mainly because of this reputation. Because no company, I don't think they would want to highlight that this is happened to for particular company and this attack is there. So, and sometimes this is something related to the client. Companies dealing with the client data. So they have some agreement, a legal contract that we cannot share the client details to any third party, including law enforcement also. So we need that consent from that client. And client, sometimes it is not from India, from abroad. So we have to follow up that country's law and rules. So it is very difficult immediately handing over this type of information. But definitely, if something it is related to national security or something external, it's a personal threat or something, we will follow up with the next part of investigation, that is the law enforcement support.
Thank you, Vijayan, for sharing your experiences, how the corporate investigations are really happening. So right to be Mr. Sanjay Gautam. I was with CBI. He's taking care of the CBI Digital Forensic Laboratory available at Ghaziabad. He's helping a lot to the nation in the capacity building, especially to train it and maintaining the lab. Wherever the critical cases are to be examined, where a huge data is going to be available, Mr. Sanjay is working. So I would like to ask Mr. Sanjay how the CBI lab is taking care of the standard operating procedures and how it is helping in building the capacities. And what are the important case studies where, without mentioning the client name or any suspect's name, how you are really helping them, and what are the various tools and techniques you are currently using? Sanjay.
Thank you, sir. First, I want to thank GSI for inviting me and my CBI for permitting me to speak here. Now, my talk will be based on my experience. It may not reflect the view of the government or the CBI, right? But we want to be very fair. Initially, when I joined CBI in 2002, we were told that when you see a computer which you own, please pull the plug. But now, when we are teaching there, we are not teaching this. Things have changed. So now, when the system is on, we ask them, okay, now you have to look for the encryption, you have to look for the network analysis, you have to look for different RAM data collection, volatile data collection. Okay, so like now when we are teaching our police officers how to go about the scene of crime when the system is on, we teach them like, please look for the encryption there, look for volatile data collection, look for network activity, and then decide what you have to do. in many cases, like where we have done some investigation, I'll not name them. Like in one of the cases, we went to a company for seizure of data, and it was a huge server. So we decided, okay, let us only see the relevant data, which was around 7.5 terabytes. Okay. So at the scene of crime, we need to decide how much data are we going to make a forensic copy, because we are not going to seize that server. Okay. So it took us 5 days at the scene of crime to make 2 copies of that image of the database. So for 5 continuous days, we were at the scene of crime. It is not like earlier, just pull the plug and then you can set down every system, you can take away and send it to the lab. So at CBI Academy, we are also having a cyber and high-tech crime investigation training center, where we train all the police officers, CBI officer, NIA, you name like neighboring countries, sir, SARC, Asian, African countries, and we are giving them object knowledge on how to go about the scene of crime. Many of you may have thought, okay, this private agency, or like they are better than us. It is not like so. Like we have to do work in a legal way. Okay, we have different rules and regulations, and the thing is like, for some things we don't have any SOP, but even then, our tools are better. Some of the tools which we are using, you may know, you don't know about them. They are only for police agency. Okay, so if you want to collect volatile data, maybe the tools which we are using, they are the best tools. Okay, they are not available for the like local private agencies. So like in CBI Academy and they are in training center, we are not only providing training, we are giving them hands-on session and live experience on the case which usually different police agency and CBI we are working on it. We are also trying to develop some SOP, but as you know, it's a very dynamic field, and when we try to develop some SOP, the things change. Okay, like so there was a recent case this year. Maybe you have heard about this. There was some gang rape video which were published online on WhatsApp and different websites. Now the thing is, like, those gang rape video, they were like they belong to 2006 or 7. But as a police officer, we can get logs only for last 1 year only. And the thing is, they are on different websites. Okay. So those videos, they are on different websites. So we try to approach like Google and Facebook. Can you help us to locate who is the uploader? But they cannot reply back. So then we used some different techniques and different tools, and we were able to find out the person who has uploaded them. It's in the news. You can go and Google around it. But the thing is, like, now we could find that these videos are on a certain website. If I download them, we also require a 65B certificate. Without the 65B certificate, they are not admissible in the court. Court are also facing some challenges for this type of evidence. So it's an ongoing process. We are trying to train them based on the best practice and our experience. And we are training not only CBI officer, different police agency, different countries, and we are trying to build harmony in the system. Sir.
Thank you, Sanjay. So let me briefly summarize what my colleagues have spoken. See, if the scene of crime, the computer system was in off condition, so our people will keep it in off condition only. They will never try to switch it on. Because if we switch it on, the date and times of the files are going to change it. The evidential value will be lost. If the computer is in on condition, we never try to shut down because the volatile data and the data that is available in the RAM. And as my friend rightly has said, the most important worrisome for us is there is a possibility of the entire disk may get encrypted. So first we will check up whether any encryption is currently running on the system or not. If the computer is having any encryption currently running, we will never make it a shutdown. Then we will collect the RAM data and collect the volatile data, and we will make a copy of the entire drive. Then only we will shut down the computer system. So this is a basic fundamental standard practice currently we are following as on date. And all the standard practices, the standard tools, because basically the digital evidence has to be maintained, means the must requirement is the repeatability and reproducibility. So by keeping the repeatability and reproducibility of the results to stand the case in the court of law to the scrutiny of the judge, the first requirement is we are following a very standard operating procedures. As he mentioned, the rules, if you remember, we will never work on the original evidence, we will make a copy of the drive and we will try to do the analysis only on the copy. So this is basically how the trend is really happening. So as per the technological changes that are coming up, we are also modifying the standard procedures. So now it is open for the audience to ask any questions related to this area. So we are happy to answer the same. Any questions?
Actually, I have two questions. One is related to.
Can you introduce yourself first?
Thanks. My name is Murli. I am working in Target from Bangalore. Two questions. One is want to understand how Indian forensics is getting into corporate world. I will explain what I mean by that. Let's assume an MNC company is there where some security incident has happened from an MNC into Indian intranet or whatever it is. So how the law enforcement or how the investigation goes on? That's one. Second is, so what is the privacy, what is the thin layer between the privacy and the investigation?
I think Bijiman from the privacy point of view can answer.
Okay. So two things. One, at the corporate level, how this investigation is going. So one incident is happened. Most of this corporate, I think, the big MNCs have their own forensic teams or the investigation team, or the CSIRT or the incident response team. The corporate will start with their team to analyze what it is happened, analyzing whatever whether it is a malware attack or whatever the type of intrusion happened. So first they identified that this has happened something internally or some externally also. It's not much affected. If it is affected also, they will identify what it is, how many systems is affected, everything. So we'll try to cure it from the internal level itself. But if it is something, it's a huge monetary loss, or if something is related to external security issue, then only it will go for the police investigation or the police. So internal corporate investigation, corporate have their own environment to analyze the forensic lab. Like I am representing IBM, we have a cyber forensic lab across India. It is situated in Bangalore. So all our internal investigation, all internal forensic, what we are doing, India, South Asia, in Bangalore only. So that type of investigation mechanism and the forensic labs are available with the corporate. And the privacy concern, you said absolutely right. When in the corporate scenario, it is very difficult for us. Sometimes if the machine is or the device used by the employee or the person who did this thing, it's a corporate or the company provided laptop or machine, it's not big issue because we can collect it at any time as per the company guidelines. We can do an analysis. But it is a machine owned by the employee itself. And if he is allowed to work with his own machine, there sometimes his personal data will be there. It's a big challenge to analyzing, because when we are collecting the machine's image, we cannot separate the personal data and the official, whatever the data. It is very difficult, especially in the case of mobile phones. When we are collecting, sometimes nowadays people are using smartphones and they are using this for corporate or what are the company purposes. Mainly is configured in the phone also. So if something has happened, we collect the phone, definitely we need a written consent from the employee to go ahead with the further investigation. Otherwise we can't. Like in law enforcement, it is easy because if someone knows, any of you did anything, I can reach out to you and ask your phone and do the analysis. That is the law enforcement. But in corporate scenario, we need a written consent from the employee, and also we need to comply with the company guidelines and company policies, whether what we can do. In that situation also, analyzing is very difficult because definitely there is personal data, because people are coming and saying that my personal data are confidential data are there. Please don't look on that. How it is possible if once you imaging that device? It is very challenging situation. That's enough. I think you can add something.
So, privacy with respect to the corporates. Many times corporates are worried about their data. Say, for example, an employee who is involved in any criminal activity. So, police, they have the search warrant, everything, So they come and seize the digital evidence. Digital evidence in the sense a company issued laptop. So unfortunately that employee might be holding a very high profile job. Okay. So end of the day company is more worried about the information that is present other than the crime related data. So don't worry, there is some protection under the Indian laws. There is one particular section 72 of Information Technology Act which speaks about the breach of confidentiality and privacy. So it says whoever having powers under the Information Technology Act who has secured access to any electronic record, if he discloses that information to any other person without the knowledge and consent of the person who is owner of the data, then that person is liable. 2 years imprisonment is there. So police officer, if a police officer has seized digital evidence and if he discloses it to some other person, then that police officer will be put behind bars for 2 years. So that protection is there. Not only the punishment, some monetary fine is also prescribed under the Information Technology Act. So privacy with respect to your data with the law enforcement, it's already covered under the Information Technology Act. And the corporates, when they are dealing with the employees' data or employees' laptop, your information security devices policies plays a very important role. Whether you have guidelines for usage of the personal digital devices in your premise. Have you notified the employees? Let us not worry about seeking consent or obtaining consent from the employees. At least have you notified? So that plays a very important role when dealing with the privacy related issues with respect to digital evidence.
Maybe can I ask a quick question? Today morning, one topic came which was about malware. iOS has the most malware and things like that. Fact of the matter is, in a desktop or a server traditional environment, we are able to basically download something. I know the HTTP, HTTPS, from where it is getting downloaded is kind of known. And second, when I am downloading, traditionally I have all the laptops and desktops have some kind of antivirus and mechanisms in place. Even firewall, whatever you want, we can have security mechanisms. But when it comes to these smartphones and tabs, no app is downloaded. Always it is a tiny URL. You never know from where it is getting downloaded. And typically all the apps by default take full control of the system. They have access to everything on my smartphone and tab. So in such a scenario, 99% chance that it is not the person who is owning it who is responsible for the crime, it is the app or the app owner. Is there a way to figure out what is not done by the app if something goes wrong with respect to smartphones? Is there any technique or any solution we have?
See, to be frank, if you ask that, yes, theoretically it is possible, but practically the capacity and the capability of the labs is a very big question mark there. See, if it is a criminal case, something you have to go to the forensic labs where the forensic labs mostly they will not deal about something like a malware analysis or the application vulnerabilities, that areas they don't work in. It is supposed to be taken care by the computer emergency response team of Government of India's forensic lab. That is their actually mandate where any application is having a vulnerability by which remember some malware is entered into the system, or it may be a man in the middle or a man in the browser attack or something. But if it has become once a criminal case or something where something has filed, so it has to the government, normal forensic laboratories. They don't have that capability to do work on the application vulnerabilities and malware analysis. So in such cases, the outcome of the case, whether that person will become a victim or not, is very difficult to predict it. But as you said rightly, remember, yes, we have to reach up to that level where it is not just traditionally forensic imaging and collection of the data and looking at the log files or something. The forensic labs have to come up to the stage where they are supposed to do all this type of analysis. I fully agree with you. So let us hope that I think we will work together and we will see that how it is. Because yesterday also I mentioned about it. The manpower build-up and the capacity build-up in the forensic laboratory is a little bit difficult. That's where the government and private should work together for information sharing and assurance centers. So we should have something like a ISAC, where if anything happens in the corporate where there is some malware is attacked, they should share that information with the government. And unless the government and private cannot work together, remember it's not possible to build up their capacity. That's where the DSA labs are really working. I advise in the DSA also, instead of routinely training for the forensic exercises for the police officers, let us make it as a level 1, level 2, level 3 courses, where the level 1 is as a first responder what they should do at the scene of crime, as a level 2, level 3 that how we should go ahead and to do the malware analysis and the application testing and vulnerabilities and all that. I'm very sure that they are coming up with that modules, what are the training material required, and ultimately that how to go for the certification, and there's also coming up. I hope, let us see that maybe the next couple of hours we can raise to that level. Thanks for your feedback and question.
Thank you.
Sir, I am Saurabh Kothari. I am Additional Superintendent of Police. I have come from Rajasthan, Jaipur. I think I have two queries actually. I think part of my query has already been answered. It pertained actually to the minimum level, the need to think and ponder upon the minimum level of certification, or rather I would say a minimum level of knowledge which is required for an investigating officer. There has been a provision in law of a particular rank to investigate, but there is simply that provision. When he stands in the courts of law and deposes there, he should be at least minimum qualified, at least enough qualified to be deposing there in terms of his ability to approach the scene of crime. So my specific question was, are we in the process of devising a short capsule course or something which is mandatory for all the police officers in the field, an exposure to that, so that when they are standing in the courts, they don't have to always depend either on the field, they don't have to depend on the FSL unit, and in the courts they can sustain and they can say that this is the minimum level which I am aware of and this is my certification, number one. Number two, are we actually working towards developing a cost-effective digital forensics kit, a software kit, which could be there at all the districts, at least, for assistance? Thank you. Thank you.
See, let me answer for this question.
Just to add to that, in fact, we really require some kind of capacity building and capability building for the police. Otherwise, usual sub-inspector, inspectors are handling it with minimum knowledge. So, is there a program, is there a roadmap for that?
With me the stalwarts from National Police Academy and CBI Academy all are available here. So I would like to answer for the first question and come back to you. See, currently there are several courses, but to be frank, the courses are in the top somewhere, it is moving, it is not reaching to the ground level officers. That's my observation. Let us take the case of BPRD's vertical interaction programs, or the National Police Academy having a very good, remember the laboratory, the best laboratory I have seen in my life. But currently it is not reaching the ground, but National Police Academy has recently got a very good grant from the Government of India for providing that training center, right, resource center. They are coming up with that area. I think Mr. Kusmakar, who is a program director for that, is also available here. I am very sure that it is going to reach it, the first point is. The second is the kit. And several people have asked me that with your experience how much really required, because the training program had to be very clear. As on date today we are not perfectly understanding it is what is the role of the police officer and what is the role of the forensic expert. And the biggest problem why that is happening is that by the time I send my exhibit to the forensic laboratory to get the report, it is taking 1.5 years, 2 years. So I want to be also partially forensic expert. That's the argument they are following it. Absolutely correct. So for 90% of the investigation, you yourself can do at the scene of crime. Only for the in-depth investigation, only how to send the exhibit for the forensic laboratory. And to establish that lab, I think you can see my videos available in the National Police Academy. If you are having 18 to 20 rupees in your pocket, I can establish that CDs. With the open source tools that are currently available, with 18 to 20 rupees, there's only 3 CDs. I'm very sure that you can afford from your pocket. There's a very good set of tools for making the forensic copy of that, for collection of the volatile data from the system, collection of the entire RAM dump, analyzing that RAM dump and identifying whether any malware is available in the system or not. Everything you can do it, but only thing we require is only 3 CDs, empty CDs. That is sufficient. So it's a very, very cost-effective kit, I suppose. I hope everybody can afford 18 rupees. That's more than sufficient. I'm very sure about it. Right. And evidential aspect, if you look at the court, you asked me a very big question, sir, to stand in the court. I've seen, I examined more than 1,400 cases in the government of India. I know that experience and all that. I went for the different courts. Fortunately, in no court they are going to ask you what I have done technically. The procedural aspects, I hope you know, you might have went it. Have you received the CD through person or through post? Where is the postal stamp? But only that questions. There is a reason why today, let them accept the electronic evidence or a primary evidence or a secondary evidence. The normal cases conviction rate, I don't know about it. But the evidence deposited by the cyber forensics expert in the court, the success rate is 99%, I can say. The reason is, fortunately, the judges and the defense lawyers don't know much about cyber crimes and forensic analysis. That was the reason why we are also saved to a very great extent. I am very sure that if you continue that trend for some more time, the convictions will increase, right? So I am very sure that evidential aspects people are taking care about it. There's a very good kit is available for 18 rupees. If you want, I can share it, what are the tools you require, how you can download and all. Sir, I hope I have not remembered your question. I think it has solved your question also.
My question was for capacity building, overall capacity building of police, some kind of a roadmap maybe by NPA or
I
by
think
some-
I'm not the right person to speak about from the government side, most probably. I think
he
Mr.
won't be
Sanjay
able
can able
to
to say.
say.
Or those who are from the National Police Academy, from the CBI Academy, they can push some light. If anybody is from-
BPRND or NPA could tell.
Yeah, BPRND, NPA, CBI, they can able to say something. But they are rolling out the programs, but how much effectively it is coming down or rolling down to the lower level, I was not aware about it. For the
Maybe
field
even recruitment of cyber experts, we have just basic recruitment is of sub-inspector, inspector, deputy SPs. And they are journalists, they are not experts, they are not specialists.
that problem
so we
is-
probably need cyber experts in official capacities.
The difficulty is there, but at the same time, the argument from the other side is also, if you train them and keep it for 3 years, there is a big attrition.
Or a very effective training roadmap, either of the two.
Now the police training is already
They're taking
included.
care, sir. Some states are taking care of that. So any other question?
Actions happening across 24/7. What is the protection for the user and where to reach if an incident has happened? Like e-transactions fraud, online transactions fraud.
Can you repeat? I was not very clear. Otherwise, I think if anybody is become victim, whom he is supposed
Yeah,
to
that is
contact.
what the awareness is not, I mean, maybe for the end user's perspective, the awareness of the cyber frauds, where to reach, what to seek, where to go and all
I
that.
will answer because it's a lengthy answer with the addresses whom you are supposed to contact it. If you are the individual, if you are doing some online banking transaction, fraud happens, whom to contact. If somebody posted our photograph in a social networking site, whom you are supposed to contact.
Mainly to like e-commerce, like it's happening 24/7, Flipkart,
I will
everybody is
answer that.
purchasing and all
I
that.
will answer
also.
that question offline after the session.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.